Media Advanced Forum, or SMAF. My name is Tim Siglin. I'm a contributing editor with Streaming Media Magazine, and I'm not sitting in front of a giant map of the world today, only because of the fact that this appears to be one of the most diversely geographical broadcasts we've done. Dom Robinson, where are you today?
36 miles from tarmac, still balding, wearing my hat to try to keep my hair on after that startup. That was quite an exercise. Tim, unclick Scott's face on your user interface because we're all following you. And
oh, sorry. All right, very good.
There we go. So hold on a minute. Let me just put you a bit of video. There you go. Let me just show you where the hell I am because it's nice and pretty, but a lot nicer than my face at least. Hold on. Let me just there you go.
Oh, look at that! You have
Wow.
I'm in a place called the Caatinga, which is the northeast of Brazil, and I am literally 36 miles from the nearest road. So it takes about 2 hours cross country to get here from the road, and it's nice. There's cactuses and everything, and me looking hot, and just about enough internet to do this, but not enough to run it, which is why we lumped it on poor old Tim this week. And now you know why I've been wearing the hat for the last 2 years, because it's quite stressful getting SMAF to run. Anyway, introduce us to everyone else, Tim. I'm going to turn my video off because I don't know how I'm even getting out to you.
Very good. All right. So today, well, actually, before I introduce our guest, we have one other host who's actually, he's in Europe this week, but had some technical difficulties on his end, Mark East, so he's not able to join us. Normally he sits in California, but today he's in Vienna. Dom, of course, is swapped from the UK to Brazil. Eric, you still in Wisconsin? Or
I'm still in Wisconsin. Still in Wisconsin for the foreseeable future.
Okay. What have you been up to this week?
Planning Streaming Media West, and been talking to Nadine, one of our guests, about that. She'll be moderating a few panels. Going to be talking to Scott Grizzle, our other guest, about that. He'll be moderating a panel or two, though he doesn't know it yet. I guess he knows it now. And pulling together speakers for that. Right now, we're getting the keynotes lined up. We have a keynote from Sandeep Chopra from from Amazon Fire TV and Devices, a fireside chat with him. And then a keynote on day 2 from Google Media and Entertainment with NASCAR and World Surf League, talking about the new era of sports streaming. So that ties in nicely with our new sports or our esports and sports streaming summit that will be running for the first time this year at Streaming Media West, which will be in downtown Los Angeles. At the Westin Bonaventure rather than the beach, which I'm sad about, but hopefully the downtown LA location will make it more convenient for folks who work in and around Los Angeles to get to for the day, even if we're all going to miss the beach.
So what was the reason sort of for shifting over there, Eric?
It was precisely what I just described. Huntington Beach, is on a map. It's not far from downtown Los Angeles, but if you've ever driven in the Los Angeles area, you know that it can be a 2.5, 3 hour drive on a bad day. And what we kind of discovered was that for folks who work in Los Angeles, it was too far for them to make the drive for the day, but not quite far enough for them to feel justified in spending a night there. So I think what we're going to see this year is more folks from the studios, more folks from the content platforms that are based in and around Los Angeles attending and speaking at the event.
Got it. Hey, Dom, quick question for you, if you're still out there before we jump to the guests. I'm looking at the stream and I see our lovely little icons at the bottom. And if you remember the very first SMAF that we did, I was eating salad, thinking that I was completely off.
It's Hangouts Toolbox, Tim. Hangouts Toolbox on the left. Yeah, and then turn off the little mini icons.
Okay, let me pop in there real quick and do that.
It was that one that caused this bit of receding hairline there.
All right, bear with me just a moment. Let me jump back into Toolbox here and see if I can.
Or you could just not eat salad during SMAF. That's the other.
I'm not going to eat salad during SMAF, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure all of our
salad munch, is it? Salad Munchers Advanced Forum. Yeah, here we go. Oh my God, it's all falling apart this month. It's definitely.
I don't know. That needs to stay in Brazil there, dog. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Hide from broadcast.
I go away for one month, and that's it. Don't worry about it. Right. So who are the guests anyway, Tim? Find out who the guests are.
Perhaps while we're waiting for Tim to sort that out, we could have our guests introduce themselves. There's Nadine Krefetz.
Hi there.
Well known to readers of streaming media, but Nadine, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers and let us all know what you've been working on.
Absolutely. So again, fortunately or not, my connection's working. I'm in Seattle. I like to call it the city of two clouds. And so this week, in fact, I've been working for you, Eric, this week. I've got a couple articles coming up. One is going to be on questions you should ask your ad tech vendor. And so that came out of a bunch of the different conversations I've had about server-side ad insertion. And you laugh, but server-side ad insertion is my new passion.
Nice.
Yes.
You like it or not, right?
I'm now called server-side ad insertion girl by some people in the industry. I have superpowers.
Can you say SSAI 3 times fast?
I can. No, I can't even do that. Okay. Anyway, so I've got that. So we've got that article. We've also got another article that I'm writing up, which is about new products that people have been creating to help people stream. And so that should be kind of a cool feature that's going to be running hopefully in the October print edition of the magazine. And we also have a workshop that I'm going to do on a similar type of content for Streaming Media West. And that'll be before the conference. What do we call that before the conference?
Pre-conference?
Pre-conference. The pre-conference workshop.
Exactly.
So pre-conference. And anyway, there'll be more info about that. And then I've got other things going on, which are on the corporate side. But since it's corporate, we won't even talk about that. But exactly, probably in 5 or 10 minutes, Scott and I were kind of hoping to have a conversation, which we may or may not be able to have about
We
AI.
will. We'll have it. By the way, Dom was able to Skype me and tell me where to find the actual link to turn off the small icon, so I can now eat salad on the side if I want to.
Okay. And I am not eating salad right now. Even though I could, like if I
All
could.
right, Scott, so introduce yourself.
All right. And I'm not eating salad because it is breakfast time here. So I am in San Francisco. I am with IBM Watson Media and Weather, former lead sales engineer. I'm now on Channels Alliances team. So a little bit different approach. Working on, building the IBM channels and partners, but also still subject matter expert, working with customers on video enrichment, using AI, and integrations like that. So that's kind of my world and what I'm working on.
Hey, Dom, since you're on video, let's talk about what you've been working on for the last bit besides, going to the Outback in Brazil. In fact, talk about the solution that you built for us that worked beautifully up until 3 minutes before we went live.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got this problem that Google Hangouts is apparently being deprecated. They've been worrying the community about that. Hangouts Live on Air. Sorry, I should be specific about that. That Google Hangouts Live on Air is being deprecated at some point. And so obviously Hangouts Live on Air is how we've been doing SMAF for the last 2-3 years. It's very convenient. It's cloud hosted. We just have a WebRTC based conference, and one of the clients is invisibly in the background as presumably being YouTube is an FFmpeg client, which then generates an RTMP stream and sends that off to whatever your RTMP feed in the YouTube cloud is to do a live stream. And so that's being turned off. So the only way to actually do a conference like this on air, using certainly YouTube, is going to be by generating a conference on your own local laptop or your own local machine, and then broadcasting that as a single RTMP contribution into the new YouTube dashboard. I assume that when they turn off the classic dashboard is when they're going to turn off Hangouts live on air, although that's only my assumption. And obviously, we have historically been trying to add the news ticker for the SMAF feed across the bottom of this stream as we go, which I've done by aggregating feeds down to my home office and doing all the encoding there. But that then means that I need to have 6 or 7 inbound streams to my home office, and that congests my bandwidth, which is also then being used to send the stream out to the remote user. So there's popular tools like Ecamm Live, which we've explored. There's Wirecast, which has got a remote conferencing facility and so on. I've been through the whole mill trying to do it. In the end, I built a WebRTC tool using Jitsi, which is an open source tool. It's very good. And it has a counterpart called Jibri, which allows you to stream out to YouTube. So ostensibly, that will become our replacement. I fiddled with it. I've added the ticker, so actually once it works, we were hoping to debut that today. Once it works, the ticker will be embedded across all the streams. It's kind of added to the master output feed and so on. And that was the aspiration of what we'd bring on air today. But unfortunately for poor old Tim, I set it all up and then went to Brazil and said, "Here, Tim, run this." And poor old Tim has trying to work out what
and
I
that wasn't even.
and,
I mean, that wasn't even it, Dom. It ultimately worked up to 3 minutes before we went live,
Yeah.
and then for some reason something failed. So I'm going to blame YouTube for that one.
I blame. It's either YouTube or Scott fundamentally, because Scott wants to sabotage it to IBM.
Well, I think that brings up a good point, Scott. The reason that we've chosen to try to do, and Dom sort of led this for us, but the reason we've chosen to do this with open source tools is you don't want to necessarily be beholden to any one particular solution. Having said that, I'm sure we'll have a conversation around that, amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And the fact that with Hangouts on air being deprecated, we were able to fall back to that today, but we're clearly going to need a solution to fall back to as well. So,
okay, can I interject something since I'm here?
Please,
okay,
please.
So there's the choice of open source and having a few problems, or going with a product that somebody has that might be a little bit more, I don't know, baked. So, which one do you go
of
for?
Course, well, we're very happy to accept your server-side ad-inserted sponsorship, Nadine.
Yes, I can target people.
Of course, yeah.
I'm just saying, as a consultant, I'm just bringing up options here for you.
The other problem with SMAP is, of course, we in fact, many of the guests that we've had on Run live streaming platforms, that's why they're interesting. So we're in a bit of a catch-22, because the moment we go with any one vendor, then we're putting the nose out of one of their competitors as well. So YouTube is pretty much so ubiquitous that nobody's really offended, apart from maybe Facebook, if we're using YouTube.
Yeah, so, I'm offended.
There's okay, well, clearly.
Just kidding.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's a difficult one. We do want a platform which is reasonably neutral to talk to streaming experts on as well. And open source is an interesting way to go, but it's not without its problems, as we've experienced for the first 20 minutes of today's program.
I will add one thing here, Dom. Michelle told me she's at school this week because the kids come back on Monday, so she's at school getting ready. She actually has a Prometheum or a smart board, and she's put the SMAdvancedForum up on her board so she can watch us while she's rearranging her room. So I thought that's kind of cool.
Excellent.
All right.
Hello, Michelle.
Let's go. Yeah. Hey, Michelle. Everybody says hey. So Scott, let's go back to you. You have a long background in the industry. I mean, you're doing the stuff with IBM and Watson now, but when did you get started? What was your sort of original point of entry industry?
So, ironically, it was kind of funny. I was a student at Chico State, but I was working in the labs, and one of the labs was a Sun distance education system. So this is back in 97, 98.
So Sun is in like Spark 3s and that kind of
stuff. So when I graduated, I went for work for a small company doing system integrators, and I found out this little small company who was doing some cool stuff on the internet. Well, it turns out they were owned by Interview. So they hired me to take over all their engineering, and then became executive producer for them. And then Interview got bought out. We ended up being owned by Akamai. So I've been executive producer doing some of the early big events, stuff from American Bar Association, this is back in 2000 where we had 50,000 simultaneous viewers, which is unheard of back then.
To let people know who don't know, interview is INTERVU.
Correct.
As you said, there was Spadera back in that period, interview,
yeah.
a couple others. Okay.
Anyway. Well, like I always say, interview is how Akamai got into the live streaming business. Before then, Akamai was a data delivery, but they weren't really into the video. That's how Akamai purchased interview. Now, the Akamai guys may argue with me, but they're not on this meeting, so.
I agree with you, Scott.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Yeah. So, but that's what the whole thing is. When they purchased interview, that got them in that market, and it was a growing market. And I remember the very first streaming media shows, which were crazy. I remember one time Enron was an exhibitor at Streaming Media West, and I still have some Enron swag from DVDs and bandwidth. It was funny as hell.
Well, and in fact, not only was Enron there, they were at Streaming Media East along with Blockbuster, because they bought the Blockbuster name to do Blockbuster Online.
Yeah,
and had a huge booth up on the third floor, because you had to take the escalator up in the Hilton to go up to that third floor. They were pitching the heck out of that thing, and then of course Enron imploded a couple months later.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've been doing a little bit of engineering, been a producer, director. Basically, left the producing side. Been mostly working now with other production companies and events companies on building their infrastructure, designing workflows. No customers of mine are ever the same, and they may seem a very similar use case, but no use case in this industry is exactly the same. Everybody has their own little tweaks, their own little ways of doing things, and helping them out to do like that.
So let's talk about artificial intelligence. I know that that's something you and Nadine wanted to talk about. Watson, of course, is well known on sort of the general level for the whole Jeopardy thing and playing chess and like. But what is AI, or as we like to call it, machine learning, doing within the streaming video space?
Yeah. Now, I also want to emphasize there's a big difference between machine vision and machine learning. Drastically different things, and people sometimes drop, they move terminology around. Obviously, machine learning is, it's artificial intelligence. It's an internet brain that'll try to help process. Well, with video, there's so much content being created. What's in it? Big thing is metadata extraction. You have closed captioning. It allows an efficiency to the videos, quicker search and discovery, highlight clipping. You're just gathering more information about things like that. So that's how I'm seeing more and more AI being used in live streaming and video.
Interesting.
So, in fact, you just listed a few things, but for people who aren't yet using some of these technologies, what are the key things that you can do? You can do, you said transcription, right?
Yeah.
And
you can do speech to text, which you can get automatic transcripts, which can be translated and do multiple ways.
Okay.
Metadata extraction, which is a big issue right now because no one knows what's in their video. Like I always say, how do I describe what's in a room? If I had to do everybody on this webcast, what would it see? Nadine's behind her has a white background, with a yellow background, white stripe.
Right.
I would type in some basic information. AI, it doesn't have that. It tells you everything. It tells you the color of your hair, your headphones, the glasses. It'll mention everything, which leads into more search and discovery because there's more information to work with. And that's the whole thing is why in video, less is more is not true. More is more, especially in metadata, because the more information you have, the more ways you can work with it.
Scott, I just wanted to mention something there. I worked with a company called Pictron a while back, and you probably remember Pictron. They did a lot of index search and retrieval, and I've written a lot in that space. One of the things that they had, and this was the late 90s, they could do 32,000 pieces of information per frame. Now, the problem was, at some level, a human couldn't really interface with that 32,000 pieces of information. This is where, when we talk about artificial intelligence or machine learning, that essentially what the computer is doing is looking for patterns and seeing if those patterns are pertinent or change over time. Is that relatively?
Yeah, people, places, names, topics, neural language learning. So what's being spoken and what is the meaning behind it? Bring in sentiment. Is a person happy or sad? A comedian can be telling a negative, something negative in a funny way because it's a joke. So is it positive or is it negative? Well, he's a comedian. It's a positive because he's trying to be funny, but the topic may be more dark. So that's kind of the weird is that's where you got to get AI involved to analyze what is being mentioned. A human will write on there, but just pure speech to text, you're going to miss things. You want to be able to do different elements, and that'll help you do quick search and discovery because I'm Googling something, and well, I'm going to Google different than you do. So I want to put in words. We might be looking for the exact same thing. Maybe I'm looking for a kitchen table. Well, I'm going to type in things probably a little bit different than you would. The more information you have, the greater the chance of you getting an accurate find because everybody's going to ask things different way.
There's also it's essentially you've got search and discovery for content after it's produced, and then you have search and discovery for content while you're in the production phase, where you actually can do things like if you're sourcing something like a baseball game with a certain thing that happens in that baseball game, three strikes, etc. Well, not three strikes, but anyway. So the idea is that you can actually match what it is that you're looking for, and so that helps with. You've got a huge amount of volume of content. You can go search through the content if you've got a library of content. You have the ability to tag it, and then so if it's a key thing that something like Jeff Bezos said, you can actually go find that content. And the key things there is that it's just going to automate a lot of what you do. When I got into doing this, which was I actually started off before I was a writer to start with, and then I got into being a CD-ROM producer. So I went back to school and did that. And while that technology existed, it was tons of fun, and I was a developer in that area. But then as things changed, that's when I actually got interested in streaming video, because taking a CD-ROM, and actually it's a manufacturing process, which means it had to be perfect before you actually sent it out to somebody. But then as that changed, I got into streaming because I could see that that's where the technology was going. So.
Just to interject, that's really funny. I didn't know that, Nadine, because I got into streaming video and streaming media because I was editing an assistant editor on a magazine called eMedia Magazine.
Okay.
The publication for the optical disc industry. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I moved over. And
exactly.
And Eric, you and Steve, what was that magazine called before it was called eMedia Live? Or was it eMedia Live and became Event DV later?
It was eMedia, and then it became Event DV. It did a complete relaunch as something totally different.
Well, funny thing is, you guys remember Ramage got into streaming media by purchasing Kumu. And, it's no longer that way, but they were DVD duplicators, DVD production. They wanted a new industry, a new delivery mechanism. So they bought out, which I think it was Kumu Valley at the time, this little thing. And then now look at them, they're, Kumu is very successful and very well known in the industry. It's kind of funny. They go hand in hand.
And I worked with Media Publisher Inc., which was what became Kumu. Nadine, you mentioned something about CD-ROMs. I was going to add, back in 2000, 2001, I worked with a company called Convera, which was Intel and Excalibur. They did the indexing, search, and retrieval as well. Scott, you said something that's just fascinating to me, because I went to them, I did a market analysis for them, and I said, we need to figure out a way to do searches with things with more than just word.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't understand what you mean. So of course, I tried to drop a beat in the middle of the conference room, which was horrible. But essentially what I said there was, there are other ways to express what we're looking for. Now I look at things like Shazam, where it listens, to the music through the Music Genome Project and comes up with what it is that you are actually trying to find. So there are many more ways to do this than just text. And obviously visuals are one, audio is another. What are some of the other ways that we could sort of go about search in the mid and long term?
Well, obviously you have like object recognition. But again, if you go back to the audio side, you have your speech to text. So now you have a transcript. But the neural language, again, is really what is being, what is the theme? What are keywords? What are the emphasis on certain things? Then when you have a video, you analyze a video. So let's say you're working with an editor, and he wants to find something on whales and elephants. He's working on some piece for some event. So the idea was you connect it with an editor, and they pull in the videos. They do a quick search. I need elephants, and I need whales. So the idea was now, if it's been processed by AI, you would go through and see, okay, in this clip, small segment, it was mentioned elephants. Now this one was not in the audio transcript, but we recognized an elephant and we recognized a whale. Obviously, they're not in the same location, but it would recognize things. And normal, like a person looking and bringing that in, they might not find that because it wasn't recognized. Someone didn't put in the metadata. Now it's there. It recognized what it might, 85, 95%. That is a whale. That is an elephant. Now that can be brought in, and that's the images. Then you also have audio. Maybe you have a great audio piece, a narration, someone talking about the wildlife reserves of the elephants. And it's like, I wouldn't think about using that, but it's a good clip. I had that one on an audio track because different aspects. It'll help you bring elements together you wouldn't normally recognize.
So when you're sourcing, you can source images, but before you get to the sourcing, what about the training? Like, even if it recognizes an elephant 85% of the time, you had to go from 0 to 85, right?
Correct.
So how do you do that?
Actually, training is pretty simple. If you have any other clips with elephants and other things, pictures, you can upload pictures in different angles. It's almost like facial recognition for animals. What is it? Is it a human? Is it a dog? Is it an elephant or a whale? You just put pictures in and you train it. Say, this is an elephant. This is African elephant. This is an Asian elephant. There's different types on there, and any other videos you can bring through, and you train it. So the first time through might be a little rough. Second time will get better. Third time. So like the first month, you'll have decent results, but 6 months from that first time through there, AI will learn so much to be drastically different. In a year from the first beginning, it'll be so much more information to work with, and it'll be refined. So like I always say, every 6 months, rerun your videos because there'll be more information to work with than the previous stuff you've ever had.
That's a really good point, Scott. And in fact, Nadine, to think about an example, if you have a Mac with the Photos app, it's got, and even an iPhone, it's got that where it does facial recognition. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating to me is 2 of my daughters look enough alike that it constantly, thinks that one is one or the other. So when I go in there and I'm cataloging pictures, it will say, is this so-and-so? And I'll say yes or no. After the first couple months of doing that, it actually got to a point where it understood the nuances between the girls' faces. And that is computer vision, obviously, Scott, but ultimately it's computer vision tied with machine learning as well.
Yeah. And the reason that's important, though, for any use in an enterprise, in a media company, is obviously if you've got something specialized in your industry, you've got to train it. If there's logos, if there's specific language. I mean, I personally use a lot of transcription services, and they still have not gotten the streaming terminology correct. So that each time I run it through, they don't actually understand what SSAI is, for instance. But for some of your customers, do they ask you about whether or not they can create customized dictionaries or customized approaches?
We call them a customized corpus, a corpus of learning. There's a general one out there that you can work from, that, the basic starting points, but then XYZ Corporation will not want the same corpus they built to work with ABC Corporation. They'll want their own, they'll want to do their own training and their own aspects. But like you look at pharmaceuticals, I always say, there's certain industries where you have niche people. An IT person in a pharmaceutical company will not speak the same language as an IT person from a law office, because it's, the basic terminology, but there's enough niche inside their industry is different. You have specialties. The salespeople are different. And that's the whole thing is, once you start getting into specific industries, you will have, catchphrases. You'll have certain things which will mean nothing to anybody else outside that industry.
But what's fascinating about that, Scott, is the taxonomy and the corpus within legal or medical is actually much easier than general speech, because when you have a specific Latin word that never changes, that describes something, nocturnal temescum or something like that, ultimately that's easy because there's so many, I can't remember what the syllabic term is, but there's so many of those pieces that fall together. If somebody's talking about a house, in general, you have to figure out context around it. And I think that's the other thing in the corpus, isn't it, is context. Well,
also, like Nadine, we were talking yesterday or the day before, we were talking about local dialects. Well, I was working with the stations down in South Carolina, and they said, the dialects down there are so different because you have some Creole, you have some Cajun, you have the local dialects on there, and just naming the cities and how they're pronounced, and you have to train it to emphasize, because what they're saying is not how you would spell it. It's like there's different, it's like also in Arizona you have, Prescott. Well, it's actually Prescott if you how to spell it. It's just how do you spell what is being said, and you get to train it, because the way someone speaks and with that thick accent being drawn out, you're going to have to train it, because it's not going to be just pick it up the first time.
So my dad was a school teacher for 47 years, and we moved from New York down to South Carolina in the late 70s, before all the Yankees came down.
Okay.
He said two things. When he went to visit the school, they asked him if he, liked what the students were doing, and he said yeah, but he was glad they hadn't asked him what the kids said, because he couldn't understand their accent to begin with. The second thing was, he got down, he was teaching fourth grade, so of course he had to do state history.
Yeah.
He started talking about the Civil War, and one of the kids raised their hand and said, "What war are you talking about?" And he's like, 1861 to 65, Fort Sumter. They're like, "Oh, the War of Northern Aggression." He never heard that term. But it was the same thing as the Civil War. So to your point, sometimes it's not just even the word; it's the way it's said. It's different words to describe the same thing.
So Scott, what do you think keeps people from using AI and ML? Because sometimes when I ask in groups, people say, "No, I'm not using this."
Let's say some people just get scared. They don't know what's going on. Biggest thing is they think it's going to be so much more work than it is. I mean, they think they got to be programmers. They have to be able to program a computer system. That's one concern out there. That's why Watson Media came together. Is yes, there are APIs. You can build your own system out there. But our point is, well, we have all these APIs. Why don't we just make our own product out of it? And you go to a dashboard and you run the system for you. Versus you creating your own solution. So that's the whole thing. That's why the same thing with all the big players out there are doing, more than just AIs or just APIs. You can do have an overall dashboard where you can run your videos through and process it and make it for every user versus only IT staff, computer science people. And that's probably the big concern is you want your marketing team, you want your different teams out there using AI for help the research. If it's only computer science-based people doing it, your limitations are more difficult. So that's why you want to keep it easy so you get more adoption. It's the same in live streaming. That's how Ustream, where I came from, is they want to make it easy as possible. Then we grew into the enterprise space. Versus if I build it for the enterprise space first, then I lose all of the churches. I lose all the other stuff. Ironically, those people will be the ones who turn out to be using the systems in the long run. So it's a different model, but you make it easy, you'll get more people, then you can get more robust.
So the key things are then asking whether or not there's the trainability for the AI and ML, also having a user interface as well as an API access, so that a range of people can use the system.
Correct.
Third thing, what else would make it easier for people to use them? Is a knowledge of knowing that a search and discovery system based on machine learning and AI something that people don't think about? Because that is one aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. On that last one is, what is their use case? What problem do they have to achieve? If it's a search and discovery, is like, I have an example. I have I'm working with a military group. I can't say which one, but they have 2,500 photographers. They have 10 people to edit that video. There's no way for them to process all that. So that's a huge issue in the workflow. So these are not computer science people. These are media people. So they need a very simple way where they have unique releases. They have to identify ships. Whoops, I told you what branch it was. They have to identify certain things. What is around? What other equipment is around there? What the personnel is called,
Iranian Navy
and identify the main officers. Yeah.
So the automation of something that was otherwise very, very manual.
Yes.
Okay.
So Nadine, as we're sort of shifting toward the top of the hour, what conferences are you looking at going to over the course of the next few months besides Streaming Media West?
Of course, because I like Streaming Media West and East. So I'm going to be speaking at the Brazilian Society of Television Engineers, and that will be in the end of August. They invited me to talk about actually AI and machine learning in the production side of things. So I'll be there. I recently spoke at the TV of Tomorrow, and they do a show in San Francisco as well as in New York, I believe, in December. So I'm hoping to attend that. I love NAB, and I tend to go there every year. So NAB, usually in Vegas, sometimes in New York as well. And there's a couple of other, I'm in Seattle, so I tend to try to make it to the Seattle meetup that is being run by Dave at Microsoft, and so that
the video tech meetups.
The video tech meetups are great, and I also get I tend to pick up a few speakers for our events as well for Streaming Media. So
nice.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about the Brazilian broadcasters, because obviously Dom's in Brazil.
He's in Brazil. I know.
Hooked up on that. Are you going to Brazil, or is that some?
I'm going to Brazil. Unfortunately, I'm not going to spend as much time as Dom is there, but I'm definitely going to spend a week there at the conference, and I've got a couple of speaking engagements there, and I at least hope to see a little bit of São Paulo, which is where we'll be. Yeah. So.
Dom, you can probably give her some heads up.
That looks like fun, and not only that, I'm impressed that you're streaming from the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no. Tips for São Paulo, I would strongly suggest don't go wandering around at random. Find some people to go with and take you to places that you know. But it's not a place to go wandering around at random, unless you're in a place like this where you could wander around for probably several years without finding anyone else to bump into at all.
By the way, Dom, I've noticed that the cats have gone quiet. There were lots of cat agitation.
The mothers come and move them to a different part of the farm. She's been cute. It's been quite cute. She's been coming and picking up her kittens and moving them while we've been talking, but they're a bit less pissed off now that Smash started. They're all sitting down watching it in another part of the farm. Avidly.
So Dom, I gotta ask you, have you had Cooey yet?
Yes, true. Have I had
Cooey? My wife's from Peru, which is obviously right there, and there's a local delicacy. It's called Cooey, and it's Ecuador, Brazil, and Peru all eat it, and some of us raise them as pets. Guinea pig.
Okay, you don't mean guinea pig. Oh, right, no, I haven't had that. They don't eat guinea pig in Brazil. No, but no, just lots and lots of fantastic steak. So
Dom, if you make it out of the outback,
anywhere down here,
and back into civilization, what events are you going to be attending? IBC, of course, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, I just booked myself up for. I'm doing IBC. I'm sending the boys off to DMUX. I really wanted to go secretly myself, but it's a developer conference, and I'm going to send all our devs over there with Adrian and Steve. I think they'll probably make hay while the sun shines over there. That's going to be good. Obviously, I'm doing Streaming Media West, and I'm going to Magnus's event in Stockholm as well this autumn, and then I'm running a few sessions at what was Content Delivery World and is now being merged with TV World to become Video Exchange Europe.
Little Max Headroom there.
I hate the expression. I hate that OTTTTTV expression. It was one that really that and AI are terms that get up my nose. I'm glad you're now using the term AI and ML. You can drop the AI, Scott. You just call it ML, and I'm happy.
Yeah, true.
But, don't call it AI. Not for myself. Yeah.
So Dom, what's
intelligent.
Magnus's event? Is that the one there in the Nordics?
Yeah, let me just get the exact. I don't want to misquote the name.
I believe it's called Streaming Tech Stockholm.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
It's just at the beginning of November, I think.
And Eric, did you do
Streaming Tech Stockholm? Yeah.
Did you do Northern Waves in this last month?
That was in May. Yeah, I moderated the Northern Waves event in Oslo this month. Whereas Magnus's event, Streaming Tech Stockholm, is all about tech. And there's another event in Copenhagen called TV Summit that's all about the business side. Mm-hmm. Northern Waves in Oslo really bridges the two and talks technology in the morning and business in the afternoon. And it actually works quite well. Nice.
Well, it's good to see those kinds of regional conferences. And I'm glad to hear Nadine's doing the one in Brazil. Sorry, Dom, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say I'm doing a presentation on 31 years of IP multicast for Magnus. So
nice.
I'm actually doing a half-hour presentation on that one rather than just doing panels and stuff.
Which you will repeat. Dom will repeat that at Streaming Media West.
Very nice. So Scott, what events are you going to?
Hey, confirmed here and on there. Brilliant.
Right now, so IBM will be at IBC. We have a big booth there. I will not be going. But looks like right now my next event is going to be Streaming Media West. Apparently, I'm working on a panel there.
We can always count on you. When in doubt, call Scott Grizzle.
Nice, very good.
SMAC is where Eric tells everyone what they're doing for the year, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's actually good, and it's recorded, so then people can say, "Well, we saw it here that you're actually going to be at such and such a conference," and
Cool.
All right, very good. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and even though this is a shorter than normal SMAF, we've seemed to overcome our technical difficulties briefly. We will go back and do a postmortem and figure out what, if anything, we did wrong with the solution. Of course, Dom, you're going to be back in the UK for next month's, because I guess that's happening the week before we're all in Amsterdam at IBC. Very good.
That's right, yeah.
Eric, what things should we look forward to in the next issue of Streaming Media Magazine?
The next issue of
the medical article that I'm working on right now for you.
Yeah, well, you're writing on. You're doing an article on the. I have to look at my editorial calendar. You'd think I would have this all memorized, right? But I'm living in October and November right now, whereas you're still wrapping up September.
What's the weather like, Eric?
What's the weather like?
In October, November, yeah.
There's snow in Wisconsin.
Yeah, there is snow in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But we've got an article in September coming up on multi-CDN strategies. We've got another article based on a presentation Andy Schuler from Netflix gave on interactive storytelling at Streaming Media East. He talked about how Bandersnatch was handled from an adaptive bitrate switching standpoint. We've got that coming up. We've got an article or two we've got one article from Tim coming up, and I think those are the big ones for September.
And every time you say Bandersnatch, I have to say My Little Pony, and unfortunately, I can't produce a My Little Pony for Dom in the middle of Brazil. But perhaps by next month, we'll be able to get another one in front of him for his binge watching.
You do know that in English dialect, Tim. You do know that in English dialect, a pony is 50 quid. So every time you mention it from now on, I'm going to bill you 50 quid.
Well, given the fact that your pound keeps dropping because of the change in Downing Street, it'll be 25 cents. It'll be like the Canadian thing.
We have an expression. For references, like people who reference things like that, and it's Brechton.
All right. Well, once again, this has been Streaming Media Advanced Forum for August. We'd like to thank our guests, Nadine and Scott. We'll leave it to you all to provide any closing points that you want to make real quick.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for having me on. And, I'm happy to come back and talk about more AI and machine learning. And I want to make sure that I use the right terminology so Dom actually doesn't get annoyed. But I also want to hear more about microservices, Dom. So That's where I'm thinking.
And SSAI.
SSAI. I talk a lot of SSAI. I mean, we could talk about that, or we could talk about something different. Just depends.
Absolutely, Scott.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun. Happy to rejoin you guys whenever you will like to have me. It's been a blast, and I look forward to your other shows.
Sounds good. And thank you all. We'll be back next month.